Hi, I'm Alex Helmbrecht, and I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Binkard. Welcome to the FARcast. Our guest today probably needs no introduction for a majority of our audience, probably all of our audience, if we're being honest. We're joined with President Randy Rhine, the 12th president of Chadron State College. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you have a busy schedule.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, so you've been president, since 2012, first on an interim basis, and then I believe your inauguration was maybe in 2013. But how would you categorize the decade that you've led Chadron State College? What are some of the things that stand out to you?
Well, I thought about that a little bit. I would say, and it probably seems trite to say so, but I think it's been a decade of change. Significant change in so many ways. I think our students come to us with a different set of expectations today than they did 10 years ago, even a couple of years ago. I mean, I think that's that's as it should be. I think our students' expectations about their experience here evolve and change. Just like everything else around us evolves and changes. So I would say that change would be the main way I would characterize the last decade. Change in technology. Virtually everything we do is impacted by technology in one way or another. If you look at the way we use data today, in just about all the decision-making processes that we have, it's remarkable how much data is out there and how easy it is relatively easy it is to manipulate today versus where it was 10 years ago, even just a couple of years ago. I mean, if you look at our student information system, for example, and the wealth of data that is in that, and how that can inform our decision making. So, change, I think, is really we always say change is the only constant, but there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We seem to have lost the days of typewriters in the business office. But think back, being down here near Con Marshall's spaces, get that kind of mechanical, historical perspective on it. But yeah, absolutely.
Well, Con will probably go to his grave with a pencil in one hand, a pad in the other.
That's all he needs.
I mean, that's all he needs to function. He's a remarkable fellow.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. His Distinguished Service Award presentation. He started taking notes of what the people were saying about him. I always thought that was funny.
Yeah, the habits never die. So, Randy, I mean, obviously, most people, when they think of the president of the college, he's the guy who talks at this event or that event, but there's not just the public-facing aspects of your job. Can you tell us a little bit about what does the job entail behind the scenes for you?
Oh, gosh, Daniel, that's a bit of a tough question. There's really the presidency, beyond the sort of public persona or the public image and function that you have, and the obviously alumni relations and things like that, being involved in those sorts of events, I'd say it's pretty much typified by the discussions and the decision making that goes on around money and people, and that's probably stating the obvious, but there's a lot that goes into the campus. Even though we're a relatively small college, we're almost 300 acres, 300 employees. Yeah. 2,000, more than 2,000 students, 27 buildings. What could possibly go wrong on any given day?
As we've seen this semester, absolutely nothing. Right?
Right. We've had our share of excitement. Yeah, if I think back, whether it's fires or a pandemic.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, bad guys running around on campus. It's we've like any place, we are visited from time to time by those unanticipated events that you prepare for, hopefully, and you never have to deal with them. But we've had our share of events, and I think the last 2 years with the pandemic and responding to that has really changed how we plan and how we'll execute for things like that in the future. And we're a lot more knowledgeable. We had a pandemic plan on the shelf, as it were, when that all began to unfold a couple of years ago. And about 2 pages into that, we realized we were going to have to make a few revisions. But that's what you do. Most of the time, things occur, and it's a very fluid situation, and you have to make the best decisions you can with the available information you have at the time, and hope that you get a lot more right than you do wrong.
Absolutely.
With being a president of an institution like Chadron State, or I guess really any institution, there's only a few hundred of you all throughout this entire country. And I think anytime you just walk into a room and you're introduced or whatever, you say, I'm the president of Chadron State College, people may sit up a little straighter in their chair or maybe think of you a little bit differently, just because inherently in that title there's that element of stature. Is that stressful, maintaining that? I mean, what prepares you for that?
I don't know, Alex. I mean, I think people have certain expectations, but I do my best to try to diffuse that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was raised that. This probably sounds a bit sexist these days, so but I guess I'll say it anyway. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. I mean. So my apologies to anyone who might have been offended by that comment, but I think I am who I am, and I was who I was before I became president, and I'm going to remain who I am when I'm not. So I try to approach the job that way. I think it's important to remember where you came from and how you got here, and I'm. One of the luckiest people in the world, in my opinion. So it's been a great job. It's like any job or anything. I don't know that I really call it a job. It's more of a lifestyle. I mean, it is a 24/7, 365-day-a-year job or commitment, I guess is the way I would say that. So it's a lifestyle, and I've been fortunate to be able to live that lifestyle. And work with some fabulous people, like you guys, and lots of other folks, and work with other students. So I try. Also, an old political saw that was given to me a long time ago was, be careful how much. Be careful when you have to use power when you use power, because every time you use it, you lose a little bit of it. And so, that's always in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. I've had a few good mentors along the way that have, hopefully I've learned a few things from, but, I'm Randy Rhine. I just happen to be the president of Chadron State College.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great answer to that question. And, it kind of leads into the next question, because both Daniel and I we're going to date ourselves here, Daniel.
But we've been here a little while.
we worked with you prior to you being the president.
Yeah.
And honestly, I can say I don't feel like you've changed at all. You're still approachable and easy to talk to. And you have to make different decisions because you have different hats on, obviously. Sure. But certainly appreciate that consistency that you've demonstrated. So as I alluded to, what were the roles you did at CSC before you're the president?
Well, I came here initially at the request of Janie Park, who was the president at that time, and who I worked with in Montana for 10 years, and Janie and I worked on some pretty exciting stuff when we were in Billings, and anyway, I came down to visit with her, and the job came open, so I became the vice president for enrollment management, first VP for enrollment management that we had at the institution. And so I tried to pull together things that were going on within student affairs and student services, and get us pointed in a little bit different trajectory in terms of the enrollment numbers. I think in the fall of 2005, I think it was, there was about a 6 or 7% decline in enrollment. And we were able to turn that around, and in a couple of years we were approaching 3,000 head count on the enrollment. And so, that worked out pretty well. Mm-hmm. And then when the opportunity came up to apply for the presidency, and, the system did a national search and threw my hat in the ring, and I was able to prevail. And I guess the rest is history, as they say. But
sure.
My background really was in one of the things I helped at Billings with was help them build their first online, one of the first online universities that made available full programs of study, and do that on that brave new world known as the internet. And that was back in the late 90s, and we had a fair amount of success with that. And then I was sort of the entrepreneur for them, if you will. Things that didn't quite fit somewhere else, I would get them started and help get them established, and then we might hang on to them, or we might roll those into another area depending on what we were doing. But so it was a lot of startup work, a lot of entrepreneurial work, educational entrepreneurial work, which is kind of unique. And got to travel a lot, traveled the world, really. There was a time when we had operations going on in Egypt and Japan and Korea, South Korea. And so I got to do a lot of traveling. There were years I traveled 100,000 base miles, air miles. Wow. So I don't miss that too much, but that was. But at that time, it was a lot of exciting work to do.
Yeah, I bet.
Randy, tell us a little bit about your earlier life. Where did you grow up, and did you always know as a young boy that you wanted to work in higher ed?
Oh, Daniel, that's a good question. I was born and raised my early years, through elementary school in Oklahoma. Okay. And so, don't hold that against me, Nebraska fans. But so I'm an old Okie, I guess, by birth. But really grew up in northwestern Arkansas, and spent a lot of time in Fayetteville at the University of Arkansas. And so that's really kind of what I considered, home, if you will. I still have quite a few relatives in that part of the world, and but Fayetteville was a great place, and went to the University of Arkansas and graduated from there 3 times. Yeah. Which, depending on how you look at it, some people would consider that a disadvantage. I considered it an advantage. I was able to get through all of my graduate work with no debt because of the program that they had there. They encouraged their employees to go to school and acquire higher degrees. But you get to a point where that you're probably at about where you're going to get to within the organization, given those circumstances, and an institution that size, it's fairly rare that they hire, dean and above from within. Sometimes they do, but so I decided to, after 14 years there, decided to look for other positions. And Ann and I had always wanted to live out west somewhere, before we were too old to enjoy it and give our kids opportunities in that type of environment. And so anyway, I interviewed for the job in Billings, and sometimes things just click. I mean, it felt right, and as it turned out, it felt right on their end. So we moved up there in '96, and kids went to junior high and high school there, and it was a good experience for them too.
Great. Yeah.
So what initially, obviously you lived in Arkansas, grew up there. Were you always going to go to the University of Arkansas, or was there like a defining moment, I suppose, in your undergraduate recruitment? Because clearly it had an influence in your life, I mean, with 3 degrees from there.
Oh, I think higher ed, and I didn't completely answer Daniel's question. The short answer is no. I had no idea that I would be sitting in this chair talking to the two of you, at some point. So Arkansas was my first choice. And I was very interested in politics always as a youngster. And my father in particular and I had a lot of great political debates about things. And so, he raised me on Time magazine and, those kind of things. I mean, we were always anxious for Time magazine to arrive at the house, because that was, we'd spend the evening poring over that, and then, the discussions would start, and what'd you think about this or that? So I actually, my undergraduate degree was in political science, and I was going to go to law school, and took the LSAT and got accepted to the law school there. And a couple of weeks before law school was supposed to start, somebody gave me a copy of 1L, which I think is the book that the Paper Chase is loosely based on, and which is about first-year law students. And I read that. I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure this is for me. And I was tired of being a poor college student. And so anyway, I about that time secured a job at the university, and decided, I think I'll do this for a while, and then decide what I do after that. And that turned into, and I got that job at the Division of Continuing Education at the University of Arkansas, which is a pretty big operation, actually. Had a mentor there that said, look, if you're going to stay in higher ed, or if you're going to work around here, you need to go back to school and get your master's degree. And so I did, and that paid off. I got a director level position, and then I said, now you need to go back and get your doctorate. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, and I was pretty excited about that at that time. And I got my master's degree is actually in educational technology. And I was interested in that because one of my roles prior to going back to school is I had started helping to produce training events for the USDA Food Safety Inspection Service that were training events that we produced and broadcast out of Fayetteville to locations around the country to help them accomplish some training goals they had around quality management. And so I thought that was pretty fascinating stuff. I got to work with satellite trucks and cameras and all kinds of interesting stuff, and help script it. And so I thought, I'm going to learn more about how all this works. Went back and did that, and then I got my doctorate in adult education there.
Oh, that's great.
So
It's kind of interesting. Your dad flipped the classroom on you, giving you the Time magazine and having you tell him what you thought was interesting. I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
It's kind of easy to see why you did go into higher ed after experiences like that.
Yeah, and I think all of us enjoyed. At least I did, but I'm sure most folks, if they're being honest, enjoyed that time in the classroom and interacting with people that you knew were knowledgeable and respected, and were able to have debates with, and in fact, a couple of the professors I really enjoyed. Challenged you to challenge them. They wanted you to get out there on a limb so they could saw you off and see how you reacted, and I think we all enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Randy, outside of academia up here in higher education in Chadron, tell us a little bit about your hobbies. I seem to know that the outdoors plays a pretty big role for you. But what do you do in your spare time?
Well, Daniel, I've always been kind of an outdoors person, and I think it's because I find I enjoy the beauty of the outdoors so much, and in all of its forms. And so I've hunted a lot. I've fished more, and hiked a lot. Spent a lot of time in wilderness areas in this country, and there's some real beauty out there.
Sure.
A lot of times you have to do a little work to get there.
It's worth it, though. Absolutely.
But it's worth it when you arrive, and I don't know. I enjoy most outdoor activities, I guess, but fishing's probably my favorite. There again, I guess back to my childhood, I had a grandfather that took me fishing a lot, and a father that took me fishing a lot, and so it's a lot of fun for me to do that. It's probably the only time that everything you can sort of what's the Kevin Costner movie where he says clear the mechanism before he pitches, but it's about the only time that things really go away, and I don't think about anything else except what might be about to happen next, in terms of a fish coming up and grabbing my fly.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that tends to happen in some pretty spectacular scenery, and I raised my kids in the same way. It took to varying degrees, I suppose. They still enjoy going fishing with me when they get a chance. It's not very often anymore, but I taught them how to row boats, down the river. They're both my son and my daughter both are pretty good on. They're good on the sticks, because they're used to paddling their dad around, to catch fish. But that's not something that everybody gets to do.
Yeah.
And we were lucky to be in a place where we could do it pretty often.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So 2 follow-up questions for that. What's one of the standout fishing locations from your past? And is there any place on your bucket list that you're hoping to get to?
Probably, there's so many wonderful places I've been able to fish. I would say one of the more beautiful and productive places was in Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a place called the Karluk River, which there used to be a huge cannery at the mouth of the Karluk, and it's not there anymore. It got taken out in a typhoon, but it is one of the few rivers left that has native runs of all the main species of salmon.
Okay.
the sockeye or the reds, silvers, kings, chum or dog salmon, as well as steelhead. It has sea run rainbows on it as well. And, of course, they run at different times. But we were there during last week in May, first week in June one year. And anyway, the reds and the kings were running. And so, the kings were all 35 to 40 pounds. Nothing smaller, nothing bigger, nothing smaller. The reds, the sockeye were all about 5 to 7 pounds, and all in that range. The reds fought every bit as hard as the kings did, really. But you kind of got tired of catching the kings because we were fly fishing for them. But you'd hook one and an hour and a half later you got it to shore. Your arms were just falling off. So and I'd love to go back there. That was probably 1994 or something like that. It's been a while. But it was fantastic. So I took my son. I've got a great picture of him because he was 8 years old at the time, and so he's standing there with this king salmon that it took him almost 2 hours to land, and he's holding it like this, and the fish is as big as he is.
Oh yeah, that's great.
So that would be nice to go back there. There were 5 adults and 2 kids that went on that trip, and I think between all of us, we brought back about 500 pounds of salmon.
Oof. Well done.
Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Fill the freezer.
Oh yeah.
You kind of have an interesting story. You ran into someone from CSC out fishing, didn't you, in Montana?
Well, yeah, I was over in Montana a couple of years ago now, I guess, and in the summertime, and it's probably, I want to say mid-July, maybe mid to late July, and I was actually fishing with a buddy of mine, one of my old college roommates. So Tom came up to fish with me, and we were going to do something a little different. And I had talked to a person I know over in that country, and they said, well, you should go to Elk Lake. And we said, fine, okay, we'll go try that out. And so to get there, you have to drive down into Idaho briefly and cross over the divide into the Centennial Valley. So you cross back into Montana. But it's miles of dirt road. If you've ever heard of the Henry's Fork River in Henry's Lake, that's on the east side of the divide, and you drive up over the divide, drop down into the Centennial Valley, and that's where the Red Rock River and Red Rock Lakes are. And it was the spot where the country was able to mount an effort to save the whooping crane. So that was one of the places where they were able to create refuge for the whooping crane and its eventual survival. And so Tom and I are tooling down the road in my truck, with Nebraska 69 plates on it. And it's in the morning, and we look down the road, and there's this person riding a bicycle coming at us. And so I slowed way down so I wouldn't dust them, and tried to be courteous. And as we get closer, the person on the bicycle stops and starts waving his arms. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe he needs some water or needs some help or something, So Tom and I back up, and it's Kurt Kinbacher. And so my buddy Tom, my old roommate from college, was mightily impressed that I ran into one of our faculty members out in the middle of nowhere.
That's the magic of Chadron.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, you just never know. And so anyway, Kurt and I had a good laugh about that, and we offered him some water, which he didn't need, and he was on about his way. He was headed to someplace in Wyoming to see some friends, and I guess ultimately on his way back to Chadron. So you just never know where you're going to run into another eagle.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, we've reached that point of the day where we have quick questions and quick answers. So
okay.
First thing that comes to the top of your head, What's the first concert you attended?
Oh, the first concert. Well, the first concert I ever attended was Sonny and Cher, probably 1970 or so. So
Okay.
maybe 70, may have been 71, 72 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah. So
That's a good one. We haven't heard that
That's
one yet.
right.
yeah, I can't say I was a big Sonny and Cher fan, but my girlfriend was, and
So it goes.
her sister and brother-in-law, took us along. So, but it was a fabulous show. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. If you weren't working at a college, where would you be?
Hard to say. Hard to say. I guess maybe doing something outdoors. Maybe I really don't know, Daniel. That's a tough one. I've done a lot of things in my life to get along when I had to. I'm not sure any of them would have been a long-term profession.
Yeah.
But given my love for the outdoors, that's definitely my avocation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, regardless of sport, what's a favorite team of yours?
Oh, regardless of sport, I'd have to say, the Razorbacks, my alma mater, right? And they're having a pretty good run in basketball this year. And
And they're always good in track and field, right?
they're perennial favorites in
Yeah.
the SEC in track and field. That's dropped off a little bit now that John McDonald's no longer the coach there, but he had a heck of a run. I think he had 38 national championships, and several.
After that, yeah, I mean, what is 39? That's so
Yeah,
many.
well, and probably that many or more conference championships.
Wow.
They dominated. There were. I think he had 5 Triple Crowns. They weren't consecutive, but I think there were 3 or 4 of them that were consecutive, where they won indoor, outdoor, and cross country all in the same year.
That's impressive.
So yeah, he was. I'm not sure. He had a great record. I've got friends, good friends that were in that program that, loved the man. I mean, he was tough. He was a tough coach, but he also got them ready. He'd recruit these milers out of high school from England and Ireland, and then turn them into 10,000 meter runners or 5,000 meter runners. And so he did that a lot. And then he had folks like Ruben Arena. And Ruben, probably one of the most talented runners that there has ever been. A lot of sub 4 minute folks.
Yeah. Ugh. Just makes my stomach turn if I even think about it. One that fast.
Yeah.
Randy, what's one of your favorite movies?
Oh, probably my favorite movie is Casablanca.
Oh, always a good one.
Yeah, there's beyond all the sort of one-liners, great one-liners out of that movie. It's a great storyline and a great human interest story to me.
Yeah.
I'm a big Bogart fan, and but there's a lot of great characters in that movie.
Yeah, definitely is.
Yeah.
So the last question is, what is one word that comes to your mind when you think of Chadron State? But before that, I want to ask you a kind of a follow-up one. I should have had it in the questions earlier. But you speak a lot to alumni or friends of the college, people who are interested in the success of the college. Do you kind of have if someone said, "What's the best story about Chadron State College?" What's the elevator speech, the epitome of Chadron State College to you? What do you talk about?
Wow, there's so many great stories. Our alums have done some remarkable work and gone on to do some remarkable things with their lives. And that's a tough one for me to single out. There's a lot of great stories. So, kind of depending on who I'm talking to, I can share stories in a particular vein. I think that all starts with the faculty that have been here over the years, because to a person, if you, even though these folks are very accomplished in their field, they will almost always talk about the faculty member that made a difference in their life, and that taught them a particular thing that was very useful to them as they moved on in their professional development. So I think it really ties back into that. It's very rare that they mention the president, and say, "Oh, that president made a difference in my life," and that's as it should be. Yeah. But the people that our students spend the most time with, and that our alums have spent the most time with, are those faculty members, and they do make a difference in students' lives. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that.
I think that's a good answer to the question, because really at CSC we are blessed because we have so many great narratives that come out of every discipline that we have, and so that's a really good answer because you can kind of tailor it to the audience.
Oh yeah, I mean it's amazing. The stories and the companies that they've gone on to create, or the work that they've done. I mean, it's really fascinating stuff, mm-hmm. and some of it extraordinarily important to this country and our history and the evolution and development of it. So this place has had a big impact on this country.
So then, condense that all. What's one word that comes to what's one word that comes to your mind when you think of Chadron State?
I think it is excellence. I think people. I don't know. Maybe people's a better word. I think we know who we are and what we do and who we do it for, and why we do it, and everybody's here to help improve our region, improve our campus, and improve our country. I think it's helping people find their way and find their path, and their passion about what they want to do with the rest of their life, or at least the immediate future. Mm-hmm. And it leads them down, and I think it points them in very good directions. That there really are some fascinating stories. We don't have time to talk about all of them today, but you talk about Dr. Butler, who was our commencement speaker last May, right? And he's one of a handful of MDs who also have a PhD in genetics. And his work has been groundbreaking work in the health community, particularly around genetics and the genetic influence in pharmaceuticals, or vice versa. And so, Ben Watson and I went to have dinner with him one time in Kansas City, and we normally schedule about an hour and a half for those things because it's a reasonable amount of time, and 3 hours later we were closing down the restaurant because the conversation was so interesting. Mm-hmm. And you just wanted to keep asking questions. And he's a great Nebraska product and Chadron State product, and he and his wife, very humble people and very accomplished, but he's done all this fascinating work. So that's just an example.
Yeah.
I could tell you about our mathematician as probably one of the first females that graduated from the math program here at Chadron State, who went on to work down at Los Alamos and do some very important work. We have another mathematician, John J. Cox, who did a lot of work on the development of the cruise missile. You just wouldn't. It's little old bitty Chadron State College, but people go on and do all these fabulous things.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking time to spend with us today. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Randy.